Back in 2001 or 2, I met Tim Westergren for the first time and made the crazy decision to invest in Savage Beast, which turned into Pandora. And so I'm really pleased to welcome to the stage Tim Westergren, the co-founder and the chief strategy officer at Pandora Media, I guess is officially the name. And for background, because you guys are out here, Tim was a musician, but then he went to Stanford and got a degree. I don't know which order it was, actually. You can tell us that. And created something called the Music Genome Project with some co-founders, one of whom is actually also now a first-round COO, John Kraft at Uber Media, and was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine a little while back. So we want to talk about durability and persistence in a changing world. So let's go back. What was the original mission when you started Savage Beast?
The original idea was to build a recommendation technology. So we were going to provide sort of music discovery capabilities for what was then this kind of exploding number of music companies on the web. I founded the company in the very, very end of 1999, right at the sort of apex of the .com bubble, and so there were just hundreds of music sites that, to me, all had one problem in common, which was navigation. It had all this catalog, which was now sort of virtual and infinite, but hard to parse. And so we thought we'd provide a solution for all of them. That's what the Music Genome Project originally intended to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you started too early in retrospect?
I often think about that. The answer is both yes and no, I think. Yes, in the sense that clearly the company that was eventually that found traction, Pandora, on this idea would not have been able to do it in 2000. There was no broadband access, and so from that standpoint, it's true that had we waited a long time, we would have come in at a much better time to intersect the market. At the same time, the technology foundation for Pandora took years to build. And we needed to start years ahead of it to have what we needed to build to launch Pandora when we did. And so those first 4 or 5 years were grueling, and there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think, oh my God, what have I done? But when we were done with that and found ourselves in 2004, 2005 with this huge piece of intellectual property, all of a sudden the timing looked perfect. So it's kind of yes and no at the same time.
Mm-hmm. When we just met Josh reminded us all about Tim pitched to Josh as well as in the angel stage before we had started first round, and they were doing kiosks. So it started out you didn't have the it wasn't you went to a kiosk and you could put in what you wanted.
Yeah.
I remember when I was involved with the company back then, going Best Buy and Walmart and all that. And, do you think that could work today, by the way, as another distribution medium? Or
no, that was a fool's errand all along. The truth is that. So we launched the company in '99. We raised about $1.5 million of seed financing, and that lasted us about a year. And between sort of the beginning of 2001 and 2004, when we raised this big round of financing, my entire focus was how do I get more money in the company? And everything we did was really to that end, including chasing businesses where even if I didn't really think it'd be a big business opportunity, it would give me paying customers and logos to put on my PowerPoint. And I really was dead focused on raising money. So I was looking for proof points and things that would allow me to tell a more compelling story to the likes of yourself. I think that we spent a lot of time and we signed deals, none of which were very lucrative or turned into kind of significant rollouts, but they actually, I think, solidified the value of what we were doing as sort of a core capability, and that was the main intention of that. We were this struggling software company playing on a field with elephants, and I think that it gave us humility to realize that stay focused on what you're good at and leverage partners for what they're good at, but understand kind of where you sit in the ecosystem. Pandora will not make a smartphone. you know. um, let those people do it
Yeah.
and draft on their success, you know.
How important, speaking of that, was the smartphone to the success of the current?
I just redefined the company. I mean, you can't overstate how important it was. I mean, we launched on the iPhone the summer of '07. I think we were adding about 25 or 30,000 new listeners a day at that point, and that almost doubled overnight.
Wow.
And we've never looked back. I mean, we're now about 70% mobile listening. So it
Wow.
has completely changed our business.
70% mobile listening. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and radio is primarily, a mobile. It's in the car.
Yeah.
That's the primary place radio is listened to, and in the home via various devices. And we really thought it would take us a long time to penetrate those markets because none of us foresaw the smartphone phenomenon before it happened, and it has sort of created this. It was this catalyst for hundreds of CE products embedding Pandora, and virtually every major car company now doing the same thing. That's all. I think you can trace that back to smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
In spite of all of the chaos of our business, everybody thought the idea was very cool, and I think you did too.
I did. Absolutely did.
We had this simple little demo with you typed in a song, and it was in we ran it literally in an Excel spreadsheet. And it would pop up 10 similar sounding songs, and damn it, man, they sounded the same, and that was cool.
Yeah.
It was like a little magic box. And I think everybody in the company was really proud of that and thought there was just something compelling, and somehow we were going to find a way to make a business out of it, which I think was your premise as well when you invested. And so that was one piece. I think obviously the second piece is, as a leader, you have to be the first one in, last one out. Myself and John and Will began deferring salary long before everybody else did. I actually started paying salaries off my credit card for a while. I had 11 maxed out credit cards by the end of this 2.5-year period. That I don't recommend. So we were the first ones to do that, always really kind of leading by example. I think you also have to learn to motivate people and inspire them, and you have to be very transparent and honest with your employees so they feel like you're giving them the full story. And then I think the third piece is sort of the camaraderie of the team itself. And I think that can go two ways. Either the team comes together and supports each other and feels a certain commitment to stay because everybody else has done the same thing, or you scatter. And that's, of course, a combination of, have you hired the right people? Do you have this compelling idea? Is there good leadership, et cetera? And we had kind of just enough glue where I think this core group felt, this is, for some reason, I'm going to keep doing this and do this alongside these other folks. So, it was
Sure.
complicated.
That's great. So, it's been 12 and a half years now, roughly, something like that.
About 12, yeah, coming
About
up on,
12.
yeah.
And you kind of started the Music Genome Project at Stanford before that.
No.
Okay.
It was after, well,
It was
after college, yeah.
Okay. So what was the most personally rewarding part for you over that period? Because you got the patents, you got the IPO, you faced down the DMCA.
Yeah. To me, the best part of all this continues to be, when we have all hands meetings and you look at a room of people who are employees of your company. Now they're actually getting salary, so it's a prouder moment than they used to be. But to know that this group of people, which for us now, is pushing up towards 500, that this is their livelihood and that they love coming to work and they're proud of what we do, there's nothing like that. To me, that's the ultimate, buzz for an entrepreneur, is that you're creating livelihoods for people. That remains by far the most satisfying part of this.
And with all the changes over the decade plus, what pieces of the original vision kind of remain untouched?
Actually, quite a bit of it. So I started this company. I was a musician for a long time before I founded Pandora, and one of its core missions was really about helping musicians find audiences to sort of, provide a tool for every musician, any sort of talented musician. That remains a really key part of what we do, and a core part of our mission going forward. And the company is still very, very focused around sort of music discovery. both from the musician and the consumer side. And that's what I think is still kind of the founding principle mission of the business. And that has really remained unchanged. I also think that we wanted to build a company that was good, that whose legacy would be something we'd be proud of. Not doing it to make money, really being a noble company, and I think we've retained that too.
Yeah, and a lot of you. How many users out here, Pandora? so that part of the mission you've done. Let's talk a little bit about the business aspect of it. If you run a terrestrial radio station, you pay a couple of % in royalties to the music industry. If you run satellite radio, Sirius XM, you pay 8% or something like that. Pandora pays.
Gets screwed.
Yeah. It gets screwed. 50% or.
Yeah, we pay the big sort of travesty of radio right now is that of all those forms of radio, internet radio is the only one that carries this absolutely massive burden to pay performers, which in principle we are totally supportive of. We believe performers should be paid for radio play, but we have this very disproportionate level of royalties, and it's the single biggest drag on our business. But I think more importantly, it's vastly higher than other forms of radio with whom we directly compete in every arena. And that's an issue for Washington. I've spent a lot of time in D.C. over the years lobbying and trying to sort of push that legislation forward. And it takes time.
So as you see what happened with the SOPA-PIPA legislation, which the industry tried to push through, and which, for the first time, in fact, the internet successfully pushed back on, that is to say, the internet players. Is there a way to bring that to the DMCA world?
As in lobbying power?
As in lobbying to get something changed in the next the next round of when the next change thing is 2 years or whatever it is.
Well, and as you know, we faced a crisis a while ago when our rates were hiked. Excuse me, they were already very high, and they were tripled by this arbitration committee, Copyright Royalty Board in Washington, and it would have bankrupted the entire industry. And we organized a grassroots campaign and emailed listeners and got people to call in droves. They actually got more calls on internet radio than they've had on the Iraq War. It's like, you can go invade a country, no problem, but don't fuck with my radio station, I'm going to call my congressman. So it's, we actually have spent a lot of time, are pretty seasoned lobbyists at this point, and we'll revisit that if we have to. And it's been a really important weapon for us. And the truth is, had we not been able to motivate listeners to call, Pandora would have pulled the plug, 4 years ago.
You've seen obviously the changes in the music business. Do you see any hope on the horizon that they've figured it out yet, that this internet thing is not going away?
Well, I think that the music industry is not monolithic. There are label by label, sort of executive by executive. They have different attitudes about digital, and some view it as the enemy, period. Some can parse friend and foe a little bit more in a more nuanced way, and some are really wholeheartedly embracing it. I think that over time, the industry will weed out the folks who view digital as the enemy, because I don't think they'll thrive over time. So I'm optimistic that the industry is going to come around, but it will take a while before I think, especially the largest players, really understand how to take full advantage. I mean, we've gone through the ringer with the industry, largely through this copyright, this royalty fight in D.C. And there were times when it was clear that a number of them just wanted Pandora to go away. They didn't care if we went out of business, and it came to me. That arose from a complete lack of understanding of what we did. Over time, they've come to learn and understand. Oh, wait a minute! They actually sell a lot of music and they pay royalties. That's actually not a bad thing, you know. So it takes some time, but we'll get there eventually.
What kind of outreach do you do to new musicians to get the musicians in?
Well, we do a lot of our own research. So we have a team whose job is to go source music, and they do kind of both current and historical research across this huge range of genres. But increasingly, it comes to us, either through direct submissions from artists and their sort of teams, or through listeners. Because we obviously monitor all of the searches people make on Pandora to launch stations, and so we accumulate this list of missed searches. So it's kind of like our early warning system for what we don't have that we should be buying. So, we keep a close eye on that. That's kind of our priority list right there.
Any possibilities going international?
Yeah, that's one of our biggest frustrations. I'd be deeply disappointed if we, didn't start that soonish, but I've been disappointed and deeply disappointed multiple times. Because it's all about licensing. Getting some kind of workable, centralized, affordable license in another country is proven to be really, really difficult. But I feel it will inevitably be global. And when we first launched Pandora for the first 18 months, you could access it from outside the U.S. We were in IP blocking, and all you need to do is type in a fake zip code on Pandora, and you could access it. Our most popular zip code in the first year and a half was 90210 on Pandora. It's true. So there's clearly an appetite for it, and our catalog is much more diverse now than it was back then. So I just feel like when we get out of the U.S., it's going to just snowball.
Mm-hmm. So you've been through this with the music industry. Do you see this happening in the movie industry, and movie and TV? Is any lessons that they should be learning?
I think you have to be careful about analogies between these two industries. I think partly because the experience of watching a movie is different from listening to a song. I do think that if you pirate a piece of music, your experience is basically identical to buying it. But if you pirate a movie and watch it on your TV, it's not like watching it in a movie theater. And I think that's one of the sort of protective characteristics the movie industry has, that you really want to watch it on a big screen. And I think that the app, granted, I guess this wasn't a good year for ticket sales in the movie business. It wasn't calamitous. But I think that there's at least kind of an underpinning in a way that there is not for music. Music is much more vulnerable to piracy, I think, than movies are. But I think they're going to have to do the same thing. They are going to have to really get a handle on subscription services and the sort of, the on-demand stuff and how you create sort of ongoing revenue from those, and not try to whack-a-mole everything like they've done in music.
I think one lesson for people in the audience here, and certainly that I've learned many times over the years as an investor, is it doesn't always happen quickly.
Yeah.
11 years to get to an IPO, but a great one, and for which I'm grateful personally as well. Sometimes it just takes a long time to get it all right and have everything come together and to get the kind of growth scale. And I think you've done a great job. Let's see if there's any questions in the audience.
I forgot where you guys are on human versus machine categorization of the two. Where's your head there?
We're all human. We don't use machines at all. Yeah, that's the only way to do what we do. We analyze songs on up to 450 attributes per song, and only really a human ear can capture those things at this point. Yeah.
Yep.
Tim, is the opportunity for Pandora to be the sound exchange for the world? I mean, the question is, can you go international? You can't, because there's no sound exchange in Belgium or have you. Is the long-term opportunity for Pandora to be sound exchange?
I don't look at it that way. I mean, we need in every territory or country to abide by local copyright laws. The sound exchange is an administrative component of that. The obstacle is not the existence or not of a sound exchange. It's rights societies coming together to sort of say, yes, we'll provide a blanket license. Then we'll kind of attach to that the necessary administrative pieces. But it requires the local rights societies to cooperate, and that's not something that we can kind of, force on anybody. We have to cajole to get that to happen.
Yep.
I can't hear you very
Yeah.
well, sorry.
Sorry, so a lot of us are first-time markets. New idea. It seems like that's happened in Pandora over the years. New entrants coming in, business models, technologies. Actually interested in the organizational part of it. How do you keep your team focused as you work pivots or changes in the model? Just the competitive threats, panic that happens in an organization that's kind of letting
Yeah, I think that managing, well, you have sort of two questions there. One, I think there's two questions in there. One is how do you maintain focus in the face of new competition, and second, how do you avoid overreacting and changing direction unnecessarily. And I think that requires a tremendous amount of intellectual mastery of the space that you're in to really understand how your ecosystem operates and what really is a threat, what is an analogous or competitive product and what isn't. And then you have to have the ability to communicate that very clearly to your team so they feel confident that, okay, we're in good hands here. The leadership team knows about this stuff, knows how it fits in, and is good at deciding when or when not to react to competition. And I think we've done a good job of that internally at Pandora since we launched. And we've had lots of new things come along, bright, shiny objects that have kind of come and gone. And each time one comes along, it's like, oh, Pandora's done now that we've got this company. But I think we've always had a pretty good sense of what makes us unique, what our protective barriers are, what our market is. I know that's kind of a very general answer, but you really need to just understand your market in its entirety and be able to communicate that confidently to your team.
Great. Well, I really appreciate, one last one.
Yeah.
Quick.
So Pandora's recommendation engine is really content-driven, defined by humans, but we're one of the instant personalization partners last year with Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other services like Spotify who really differentiate themselves as a really social music listening service.
Mm-hmm.
What's your approach to social discovery by friends or trust?
Well, I think social and music are actually awkward bedfellows in our opinion. Because on the one hand, music is a very social experience. We go to concerts together, we share records, etc., something we can all relate to. At the same time, there's a big part of music listening that's very private. And we've actually surveyed our listeners, and only a very, very small % are okay with their musical tastes being shared broadly. And our pedagogy as a company is to err on the side of the conservative with regards to information sharing, and I think that's actually proven to be a wise choice for us. We would love to work with Facebook more broadly and take advantage of that massive network of listeners, no doubt about it. But we will only do that in a way that I think is kind of consistent with what our listeners want. So that's kind of the trick for us, is how do we sort of put that together.
Great. Tim, thanks so much.
You bet, yeah.
Really appreciate it.